Is a list of the committees that the league is going to run this year. They're not all that different from previous years, but what we hope to do this year is make each committee a little bit more active. So if there's anything on the list that looks really interesting to you, I put my phone number there. I'd love to hear from you, and I can explain to you a little bit better about what the committee does, and hopefully you might be interested in joining. I did put a note there that these committees do not take much time commitment. It's not like a lot of committee meetings or something. But what we are going to do is kind of watch legislation and see what's happening in the state and the county, and when things come up that seem interesting to us, we might ask the appropriate committee to kind of keep an eye on what's going on. So those are the committees. We will have a really short business meeting at the end of Mr. Kersey's speech, talk, presentation. Conversation. Okay. So let me introduce to you Donald Kersey. I think it's always fun to know a little bit about the speaker. And can we call him Deke?
Please.
Okay. Donald Deke Kersey. He's the Elections Director and Deputy Legal Counsel at the Secretary of State's office. And he has very kindly agreed to talk to us about election integrity. We're all kind of hearing all the talk about how foreign countries are getting into our election systems, and we're hearing talk about how voter rolls are being cleaned up, and just odds and ends. We sent him a list of questions that we think the audience will be interested in hearing, and then hopefully, if we have a little time, we'll take questions from the audience at the end. But let me tell you that the internet makes it really easy to find out things about speakers, and I found out that Deke played halfback on the Bluefield Beavers.
Wow.
And I also found out that Deke played in a garage band called Deke and the Freaks. So we won't ask you to sing those. Okay. Do we have any questions or anything that we need to talk about before we turn Deke loose? Okay.
All right, thank you. Can everybody hear me okay without the microphone?
Yes.
And in the back too?
Yes.
Okay. We're not going to use it to move around a lot. So hi, I'm Deke from the Secretary of State's office. And thank you all for having me here. I think it's really important that we talk about election integrity and everything the Secretary of State's office is doing, because when you read headlines like Russia has hacked our election, or 75,000 names are taken off the voter rolls, it raises a lot of eyebrows and red flags. So when we talk about how those things happen and what really happened, I think we all can have a little more confidence that our elections are safe and secure. So as Vicki mentioned, I have this nice list of questions. They were on the handout as she came in. If you didn't get one, that's okay. I'll read off the questions and then I'll just kind of go through it. There are a lot of questions. And there are questions in the questions. So,
Just leave it up to your discretion.
okay. And if you have questions as I go, I really prefer just to be very informal. And if you want to stop me and say, wait a minute, did I hear you right? Please do. Before I start, Penny Brigg came with me. She's there in the back. She is the Secretary of State's office field rep for the northern part of West Virginia. So she has 11 counties that she travels to in the state. And she'll be at the county clerk's offices. She'll go to voter registration drives. She's sort of the eyes and the ears on the ground for the Secretary of State's office. So if you have any questions, and you can never get a hold of me, you can always call Penny. And all her contact information is on our website, or you can call me. I have cards up here, by the way, if anybody wants a card. It doesn't have my direct line on it, but I'll give it to you if you like. So, all right, let's jump right in. The first question is, and I'll read the whole thing, and then we'll just pick it apart. How are voter rolls cleaned up? What criteria, how often, how many people were purged under the new Secretary of State? Is the process standardized across the counties? We hear there is some cross-county communication between county clerks. Can you describe this? Have there been reports of voters being mistakenly purged? And what is a voter's recourse if he or she is told at the polls that they have been removed? So, first and foremost, I want to start this with kind of a technicality, but it's an important one. The word purged is not the best word used when we're talking about taking someone off of voter registration. Purged refers to when somebody's record is actually removed forever from the voter registration list. And when I say voter registration list, I mean the online secure database that we keep at our office. The right word you want to use is canceled. So when a voter is canceled, that means they're no longer eligible to vote. That is, if they walk into the polling place on election day, they're not allowed to cast a regular ballot. They would have to cast a provisional ballot. So there are a lot of reasons that the West Virginia Code allows someone to vote, and a lot of reasons that they should be canceled. And I think a lot of people hear the word cancel, and I'm one of them, and it makes me very concerned because, and I'm the voter disenfranchisement. If you cancel, then you're not voting securely, you're not voting privately, and somebody's got your name on an envelope with your ballot, and they know how you might vote. So, the National Voter Registration Act requires states to maintain accurate rolls by a reasonable program. And it requires states to pass different laws that sort of you should follow to keep those rolls clean. And I'll just kind of go down the ones that we have in West Virginia and then talk about on the national level what other states do. So the first thing we do is the National Change of Address program. If someone moves, and I'm going to speak very 30,000-foot view. If you all want some details, we can go into details. But the National Change of Address program is a program that was designed where the United States Postal Service keeps a list of voters who look like they have moved from where they're registered to vote. Under the law, under West Virginia law, you have to be registered where you live. It makes sense. It makes most sense for municipal elections because you don't want someone living in Star City, or maybe I should move a little further up. What's outside? Yeah, they might be from Monongalia. Someone living in Kingwood voting for a Morgantown mayoral election. You want your constituents to be in your city limits. So that's the most important reason you want to have the person registered where they live. They're electing the people that represent them. And you know the folks around you electing the people that represent you, not people outside your boundaries. So if someone has moved, in other words, if they have put a notice to the USPS online, or if they have called, or whatever you do to forward your address to somewhere else, and the USPS keeps that, and they send us a list every 2 years. That's what the West Virginia Code requires. Every 2 years we get a list from the USPS that says, these folks look like they've moved, and you should send them a confirmation notice. And the confirmation notice says, hey, you're a registered voter. It looks like you've moved. Can you either confirm that and update your address at your new location where you live, or can you tell us that you haven't moved so we don't inactivate you so you can't vote down the line. A little caveat, when you move, if you don't return one of those cards, you can still vote where you're registered to vote for 2 federal elections. In other words, if I send that confirmation notice out and it doesn't come back, or it comes back and says undeliverable on it, you can still vote, just like you're a regular voter, the next 2 federal elections. Now, if you don't cast a vote, that means you can be canceled. But it's up to your county clerk to take that action. So if I know Jenny Sue doesn't get mail at her house, she only gets a P.O. box, well, that means she's registered to vote in a P.O. box, which technically doesn't comply with code. But if I'm the county clerk and I know that that part of my city or my county doesn't get mail at their house, I can go ahead and say I confirm her physical address, which all the county clerks, thank goodness in West Virginia, do that because they know their counties, they don't want their voters to be disenfranchised. So anyway, we get this list from the National Change of Address Service. Every 2 years, we send confirmation notices out, and then for any that are returned that says, yes, I moved, that results in a cancellation. So, yes?
But if you send something and the person isn't there anymore,
Then they're not registered to vote at their physical address.
but it doesn't come back, if you don't get anything back from them?
Oh, if you don't get anything back, there's a 30-day period where the clerks have to wait. They can't do anything for 30 days. But if it doesn't come back at all, then that voter can be made inactive.
Okay, and the post office won't forward things after a
Some
certain
do.
amount of time either.
Some
right?
do. It depends on the post office.
Yeah.
I know in Eleanor, we had an issue where a lot of the residents there don't get mail to their house, and a lot of them had outdated PO boxes, or they had rural routes, or there's a couple other highway routes that you could have as an address, and a lot of those were outdated because of the 911 updates. The county clerk knew that those voters had moved, so they were able to find them somehow. But you're right. If it doesn't come back at all, then that voter will be canceled eventually. It's not automatic. There's still a requirement that you have to wait 2 federal elections after the confirmation card is sent. So the longest period, if a confirmation card is sent today, it could be almost 7 years before that person's actually canceled. But once you're canceled, what happens? Let's say you're accidentally canceled. You can still go into your precinct on election day, and you can still vote a provisional ballot, because you won't be in the poll at that point. You can vote a provisional ballot, and then your county clerk can look you up, call you, investigate, drive down to your house, call your county assessor, call your cousin, and see where you are, and if you're still at the house where you're registered to vote. And if you're not, your county clerk can look you up, find you, get you registered where you do live, or otherwise say, you moved out of your county, we have to cancel you in our county, but here's a voter registration application. You can go and register to vote in your new county. So that's the NCOA, and that's the majority of those numbers that you see coming off the list. Right now, we're at about a little less than 75,000 this year, since January, that have been canceled in West Virginia. But something like 44,000 of those, that process started 3.5 to 4 years ago during the former Secretary Tenet's regime. So that's when those confirmation cards would have gone out, they either came back undeliverable, or they didn't come back at all. So this is just, those numbers, they just happen over years. And that's what the majority of those numbers are. So some of the other numbers would be the Division of Corrections. If you're convicted, if you're serving a sentence for a conviction of a felony, or you're on parole, or you're on probation from a conviction of a felony, you're not eligible to cast a vote or to be registered to vote. So we get a list from the Division of Corrections monthly for anybody who's currently incarcerated or currently on parole. We send those to the county clerks, and they check their queue and their voter registration system, and they make those changes. Specifically, those voters are canceled. But once a felon, this is a common misconception, once a former felon has served the sentence, is not on parole or probation, their voting rights are automatically restored. It's an automatic restoration. They don't have to go to the courthouse to get their rights restored like you would for gun rights or anything like that. It's automatic. So as soon as that sentence is served, they go to the county clerk's office and register them. So that's the Division of Corrections. The Social Security Administration. If you're a ceased voter, obviously you're no longer eligible to cast a vote. So we get a list from the Social Security Administration called the Death Master File. And it's where Vital Statistics sends all of their death certificates to a national database, and we get that through the Social Security Administration. So if we get a record that someone has been deceased, we'll send it to the county clerk's office, and they're able to take action on that. Lots of county clerks also look in the newspapers for obituaries. I know Carrie Delaney's office does that. In Boone County, there's a woman named Pam Johnson. She wakes up every morning, reads her coffee, and looks at the obituaries. Not just for her friends, but also for voters in Boone County. But that's her job, so I'm wondering if she watches this video. So something that's happening more recently that we're finding is that folks move without telling the county clerk they move to a new county. This includes college students. This is a really popular thing in Morgantown, in fact, which is why West Virginia, Mon County had something like 2,300 voters canceled for this reason alone. If you move to a new county as a college student, you can register to vote where you're living as a college student. But once you leave that county and you establish residency somewhere else, you're canceled from your old county. So those 2,300 voters in Mon County that were canceled this year, were the majority of them were under 23 years old, and they left the county. So a lot of these numbers that you see throughout the state are people who have moved from county to county to county to county to county and just never told anybody. Or the county clerk caught it when they registered to vote in a new county and canceled it. So, and I'll play it out so you can see how the numbers can tally up really fast. Let's say Sarah moves from Mon County to Marion County, and you register to vote in Marion County. You now have 2 registrations. Well, if Carrie Blaney sees that you registered in Marion County, which she will in our voter registration system, she'll hit a button that says merge. She'll merge your old voter history, which is just when you voted, not who you voted for. We don't keep that anymore. But she'll merge your record from Mon County to Marion County. When she hits merge, though, it counts as a cancellation technically under the law. So as people move, those numbers just keep going. So, and people who move out of state, the same thing. If they move out of state, you get a notice in the mail from either the National Change of Address Service or another state. It says, hey, it looks like this voter was registered in West Virginia. Can you confirm? We would be able to send that voter confirmation card and say, did you register to vote in a new state, or did you establish residency in a new state? If so, please let us know. And we can cancel as long as we get a signed card. Yes?
So a quick technical question about, I actually did this move, but I moved from Preston County to Mon County last year, and I updated my voter registration through the Secretary of State's website. How does that automatically merge my old?
No. So the only people that can take any action on a voter registration is a county clerk. So when we see all these headlines like Secretary of State canceled all these people, we've never canceled a single record in our life. It's in the entire history of the Secretary of State's office, we can't by law. It has to be the county clerk. So when you did that, when you got online and typed in your information for Mon County, the Marion County clerk will get a blip on her voter registration system. It looks like Facebook. Does everybody know what Facebook is? Now, you'll get, when you get notifications, it says 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 comments waiting. That's what our voter registration system looks like for the county clerks on the administrator side. So they'll have, it'll say DOC for Division of Corrections. It'll say 17 records to review, or CM for cross movers, which would be you. You move across county lines. 7 to review. And then they click on it, they'll see a record, they'll review it, it looks like you did move, or merge in that case.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's, and you asked about ERIC, and you've all probably read about ERIC and the Kansas cross-check. So all those things I just mentioned, the Social Security Administration Death Master File, the Division of Corrections list, the the cross movers, we get cross-state and cross-county movers, all that comes from ERIC. We get that from the Electronic Registration Information Center, which is just a data-sharing, nonpartisan group. It's 2 people and an attorney. It's a girl who's really good at computers and a CEO who's just a manager. And all they do is they collect voter registration database information from the states that are participants, which there are 20, including DC, and they compare it. So if someone moves from West Virginia to Oregon, because Oregon's a member in ERIC, we would know. But if someone moves from West Virginia to Louisiana or to Texas, who aren't members of ERIC, we would never know unless the Texas voter registration coordinator knew that that person moved from West Virginia, which is really difficult to ascertain because not all states ask someone where they moved from. So that's why ERIC is a good group to be a part of, and it's not at all partisan. In fact, they are really hesitant to do anything that would seem partisan. There was a feasibility study done recently about voter fraud, comparing voter history across state lines, and they found thousands of records. But when they investigated it, there were only something like 120 actual cases of fraud out of like 11.5 million people who voted in the 2016 election among 5 states. So it was like 0.001% of voter fraud from those 5 states. But voter fraud is a very hot topic, and ERIC doesn't really want to be a part of the hot political topics, so they won't let West Virginia participate until they think about it more. Yes?
I was talking about this with Natalie 2 years ago, and became very clear from what she was doing. But this voter fraud is more a scam than anything else to get people feeling secure about voting.
Yes.
And with her, she said the big problem is electioneering because it intercepts the voters' main reason for being.
You're right.
At every link, and it silences.
It does. You're right. And electioneering is something that I focused on in the most recent legislative session. And we revised an interpretive rule in Code State rules that interprets what is electioneering, what does it encompass, what is and what is not prohibited. For those that don't know, the legislature sort of relaxed the restricted area. When you go to vote, there was a 300-foot restricted area where you couldn't electioneer within that area. You couldn't even be in that area unless you had a reason to be there, such as voting or you work at the courthouse or something like that. Now that's a 100-foot restricted area because, long story short, the Kentucky Secretary of State's office had a case that went all the way up to their circuit, and the circuit court said 300 foot's way too long, 100 foot is more constitutional. So our legislature thought we should shorten it. But electioneering is a major issue, and it's going to be a major issue in the next election because now you're not prohibited from electioneering within the 100-foot restricted area if you're on your own private property. So let's say this is a voting, let's say a precinct, and you live right across the street of that house. You can be in your front yard and you can electioneer all you want if you own that property. So in my rule, what I wrote was only people who own the property can be there. And renters aren't technically property owners, so you can't rent a property as a candidate or whomever and go electioneer for a week, for a month, or however long around the election time. You actually have to be the property owner to electioneer on your property. So we try to restrict permissions that the legislature allows. But I agree, electioneering is a substantial issue. But we have investigators throughout the state, and rather than being in the office, we've changed the model to where we have investigators with the Attorney General's office, the FBI, former U.S. Marshals, several task force members throughout the state. And it's on a contract basis. So when we have an issue, they're there. It's not where they live in Charleston and they have to drive to Martinsburg for hours. They're wherever we need them, whenever we need them. And I think we have a great election here for the municipal elections. There's something like 132 in the state, and all of them contracts off.
Are they apprehended on the spot?
So you can't, we have arrest powers, but we don't really arrest people unless there's something egregious, like crazy guy in the yard. But that would be more of a sheriff, and the sheriff actually has the ability to at any point in place and disrupt. It's being disrupted by someone. So that's what we tell our folks. It's called a sheriff's office if there's an immediate threat. But if there's an investigation, then we have not only the authority but the ability. To sum up, but listening this because I got a lot of questions. We follow the National Voter Registration Act, and we follow what the West Virginia Code says we have to do. And the county clerks, you all know, there are some that are extremely, they feel one way, and other county clerks feel the other way politically. But when it comes to elections, when it comes to voter registration miscellaneous, there's a consensus among everyone that it is important to have our rolls maintained accurately. So on the flip side of that 75,000 number, registrations that have been canceled, we registered 30,000, which is more than we registered last year, total. And that was as of today. So we got a couple more months to do this. And we've partnered with Inspire West Virginia. They have a new contact here that lives in Morgantown. There are a couple of WVU reps working for Inspire that I've talked to, and all they want to do is run voter registration drive after voter registration drive. And we go to the high schools, and we go to all the colleges, and we're all running. And we'll pay for all the voter registration application cards that they want, and we can give out as many as we want to certain people, but we can only give 20 to them at a time. But if we send our field reps down there, we can have a stack of 1,000. So that's another benefit of the field reps. We can be wherever we want and give out as many registration cards as we want. And we are, and we will. So, next.
I have a question.
Yes.
Supposing I were to register and somebody assigns the name Donald Duck, do I have to turn that in? Am I obliged to maybe if that's for the real name or something?
You don't have an obligation to turn it in.
I don't.
No. If you feel like this is improper or whatever, you're actually just giving them the opportunity to register. So if you say, I don't want to take that, but you don't have to take that. There's nothing in law that requires you to take that. Unless you're part of, maybe Inspire West Virginia has a policy that we won't turn any applications down or something like that. But I've never read a single law that says you have to take an application as someone running a registration drive.
Except if you accept it and don't tell the person you're not going to turn it in.
Oh yeah, you couldn't just take it and read it later and tear it up.
Yeah.
It would have to be, I can't accept this, you'll have to do this yourself. You're right, sorry for not making that clear. Okay, so the next question had to do with Eric and cross-check, and I'll talk just for a second about cross-check. The cross-check, we've heard a lot of negative press about cross-check, because the matching criteria that cross-check does is much shallower than what Eric does. Eric looks at first name, middle name, last name, driver's license number, last four social security number, address. That may be it. That's a lot of personal, that's a lot of person identifying information. Cross-check looks at first name, last name, and residence. Date of birth if the state sent it to them. So former secretary joined cross-check a couple years ago. And we still use cross-check, but only as a supplement to all our other lists that we get from Eric or our own voter registration system. We don't look at a cross-check result and say this person needs to be canceled because it looks like they registered to vote in Kansas. We would take that name, run it through our system, run it through an Eric list, things of that nature. So cross-check, we are a member, but we don't use that exclusively. We use it as a supplement to an Eric list or our own voter registration list. Voter ID. I have a really exciting thing to show you, but I'm going to wait. I just wanted to say that. I wanted to talk about the security of our voting systems themselves. If you've read the news recently from our office, we have partnered with the National Guard, and we have a soldier who is full-time. He works for the Guard, so he's a reserve soldier. He's working full-time in the Fusion Center, which is a law enforcement facility in Charleston. And all he does is watch our voter registration system and all of our election systems. That's his one job. Yes, ma'am?
A little louder, please.
I'm sorry. We have partnered with the West Virginia National Guard and hired a full-time soldier whose main job is to monitor our cybersecurity, hygiene, and the security of our voter registration system, our voting systems themselves, all of the other systems that we use, like e-poll books. If we have an online voter registration from Wood County, there would be an electronic transmitted message that comes to our server in Charleston. He can see if anything interfered with that. He was trained to do cybersecurity for the National Guard. He has a top secret clearance, and he can talk to the Department of Homeland Security, and he does on a daily basis, about suspect internet provider addresses. So to put it plainly, if there's a breach of our voter registration system or our online voter registration system where you go online to vote, to register to vote, or to change an address, or to even check your voter registration, he would be able to see that there is any kind of traffic that impacted that transmission from wherever you are in the world, not just West Virginia. So anything coming into our firewall, it's logged, and all he does is read ISP addresses all day long. Yep.
Has he got any sleep like that?
He likes it. Here's how much he likes that. He's in Puerto Rico now for the relief effort, and he's still watching his computer at night because he doesn't feel like he's doing his duty to the state of West Virginia by not watching our voter registration system. We didn't ask him to do that. So he's working 12, 14-hour days, then he goes home and checks his computer for a couple hours.
So he doesn't have a 13-year-old that was.
No. So that's what we're doing just for the electronic part of it. The voting machines themselves, a lot of folks are concerned about the security of the voting. We say voting system. It's the physical unit you walk into to vote. Mon County, you're right. I believe you said this. You think Mon County does a great job. They do. Kerry does a wonderful job with their security of all of the voting systems. And security is twofold. It's the physical security, where the units are actually located, and then the cyber security. Is the back of it protected? Have you run a test? Have you tried to breach it yourself? Kerry will test it 3 times for an election with faux numbers. She'll throw in a faux election, a fake election. She'll program herself. She'll run through the gauntlet. and see if there's any way she can alter the results, or if the results have been altered and they weren't tallied right. And every time, she's pleased to report it works, and it works well. Her system works well. So, to put everybody's mind at ease, the voting systems themselves, the units, never touch the internet. They never, ever touch the internet. They don't even have the capability to touch the internet. It's like a microwave with a screen. It doesn't have the ability. You couldn't plug a cord into it to make it touch the internet. Yes?
I've heard that Bluetooth is now a way to get into a computer.
We don't have Bluetooth on our
Oh,
machine.
so I was going to ask, didn't have Bluetooth? Okay.
Nope. We have a part of the machine that could be a modem. But in West Virginia, none of our voting systems have been certified that allow modem. So modeming, just so you know, is when you send a result from the unit itself to a central counting center where the votes are tallied electronically via wireless internet. And our machines aren't certified to do that because in West Virginia, the only voting systems that our state election commission can certify have to be certified by the Election Assistance Commission, which is a federal group first. And we actually have 2 certification requests right now pending that will be in our office on Wednesdays if anybody wants to come and attend the public meeting, or you can actually watch it online. It will be streamed. And it starts at 10 a.m. So if you'd like a link to that, let me know. And my card's up here. You can email me, and I can email you the link back if you like. So that's next Wednesday at 10 a.m. And Professor Carty, Vince Carty at the law school, he's one of the state election commission members, so he'll be there. So anyway, the voting systems themselves are very secure. The hardest part about voting system security is the physical security. It's keeping the door locked and making sure the janitor doesn't have a key, or there's not a code on it that everybody knows. Because what came out of the Las Vegas DEF CON convention, which if you don't know, it's when a bunch of tech guys and computer guys get together and try to hack something. And this year, several things, but this year they actually bought a couple of old voting machines off eBay from Tennessee, and they hacked those voting machines. And it took them over an hour. The fastest was over an hour. And they had physical access to the unit. They were able to poke and prod and pull apart and plug their stuff up to it. The only way you could hack a voting machine in West Virginia is if you did that on election day in the polling place. And that's for one machine. You'd have to do it for, well, we have 1,800 precincts, and there's usually 2 to 4 voting machines in every single precinct. It's a lot of boots on the ground not getting caught to actually hacking the West Virginia election. So to sum it up, our systems in West Virginia are very secure. Not only because they don't touch the internet, because the physical security involved at the county courthouses or wherever they store the machines is extremely well done. And because on election day, I'm sure you know this being in Mon County, when you vote your ballot, it comes out and it's printed. You have a verified printed ballot. You can look at it and see if something's wrong. And when you go put it in the ballot box, you're the one that takes it to the poll clerk, and you watch the poll clerk put that in the ballot box. And then what happens is in the back of that machine, we have the votes tallied already. We already have a printed summary of all the votes. We'll take that, we'll go look at the ballot box, pull out the paper ballots, and confirm that the tally match up. And if there's more than a 1% discrepancy, they hand count the entire precinct. So there are a lot of safeguards. And if there's still a discrepancy, we'll throw out the results.
Qualified in Mon County, how many different kinds of systems are there across?
Several. You have the express vote, which is what you have in Mon County. They give you a blank piece of paper or a card, a voting card. You put it in the machine, it spits out its print. You have the optical scan, which is you have a ballot. You put it in the machine, you do some stuff, it marks it for you, and then the stub is torn off as you go to the ballot box. And then you have an auto mark, which is a very, very similar thing. There's 3 main different kinds of systems in West Virginia. And then one county still does paper, which is actually the most secure. Any other questions on your voting machine, your voting systems? Yes?
Why aren't they all the same?
The counties have to buy it. We got a grant in 2005, we being West Virginia, called the Help America Vote Act grant. Millions of dollars. We paid for machines for the state, or we help. We still have about $2.5 million in a loan account. The counties can get the same deal from us, finance yield 0% interest for 5 year on a 5-year loan to buy a voting system, as they would from a vendor. The vendor gives them the same deal or better. So they never ask for a loan from us for help. There is, but all these are up to date. All of these, they have to be ADA compliant, and you have to have at least two in every precinct for a federal election, or an election with a federal counterpart, such as, so in 2018, we have some Senate seats on the ballot. So because I have a federal counterpart, all of the races on the ballot will be on that voting system. But the EAC, the Election Assistance Commission, which is the federal group that oversees the elections and puts out guidance for the states, who has to certify all our machines. They put out these guidelines, these base standards called the Voluntary Voting Systems Guidelines. And the 2.0 version just came out. It's only 6 pages long now. The old version was like 60. The main thing that changed was that you have to have a paper verified auditable trail, which West Virginia already surpasses. Not only do we have the paper in the back of the machine. It's like a receipt. So every time you vote, the principal will receive in the back, but nobody can get to it unless you open the machine with a key. So we already surpassed other states. For example, in Virginia, they have machines that don't have a paper trail. And their election director, his name is Edgardo Cortez. I met him at a meeting a couple months ago, and he said he's been doing this for years, and he had to decertify something like half of his state's voting systems. So they're spending millions and millions of dollars because they don't come up to the standards in West Virginia. We surpassed Virginia's standards. So that's something that West Virginia should be proud of. And just generally speaking, West Virginia is spoken very highly on the national level.
Good.
Can't hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh.
I want you to hear me.
Oh, yes.
I voted in Star City, and they have new machines. The machine has no privacy for the voter, because the man that was directing people, he said, he talked to someone, and he said, just put your finger there. He was across the room. I could see what people were voting, because the machines, the faces of the machines, were pointed toward the center of the room.
So that's a concern. And I'm glad you brought that up.
There was no privacy. I mean, usually you have a little...
By code, it has to face away from anybody. It has to be completely...
They were all facing the
It has to
center.
have it.
And there must have been about 6 machines in that room.
Okay. So I'm sorry to hear that.
And also, they were asking some people for their addresses and birthdays and so forth, and I was surprised about that. I wasn't asked. He was.
Apparently they can ask your birthday, so that's something I had not.
Really? So they can ask, but they can't turn you away if you don't want to tell them.
Or you don't have to tell them.
You don't have to tell them, no. You just tell them your name.
Yeah, well, the poll workers are not too clear on what's going on.
Okay, well, that's good to know. And in Kerry's defense, it's very difficult to train hundreds of brand new poll workers, especially in a fix like the road bond election recently. She had hundreds of new poll workers because nobody wanted to work on a Saturday. So it's tough to train them to do all the little things, but I'll definitely bring that up with them because it is a concern. That's a big concern. And it's just since we're talking about it, if you ever see anything on election day that even seems suspect, call us.
Yeah.
Call Kerry.
Yeah.
Call anybody.
Yeah,
With your Secretary of State's office, and we can at least make a phone call and see what's going on.
So
Yes.
I wasn't able to, you're closed on Saturday, Secretary of State office.
I was there.
But no one answered. But Kerry did respond immediately, and she apologized. So they had to quickly move to a new location. It was a lot smaller, and she said they didn't have room for the privacy coverings. I would say no.
Really?
But I did point out that it definitely was no privacy there, and she apologized quite a bit. But I think, so she's aware of what had happened. There was just some bad things happened that should have not happened. So.
Well, it's good to know. We have been memorializing all of these. They seem like little issues, but I think they're major issues because voter secrecy really has a major effect on voter confidence on election day. Whether or not whether or not I would feel intimidated, somebody might feel intimidated if they know this guy over his shoulder, over his shoulder is watching who he's going to pick or what he's going to vote for.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. Exactly. So. Well, I can assure you that I'll talk to Kerry about it, and we'll make sure that when we put out the new poll worker video, which we will for the 2018 primary election, it'll be very clear how to set up your polling place. So it is. All right, so let's get to the good stuff. Voter ID. If you don't already know, the legislature passed a law that says, starting January 1st, 2018, every person who goes to vote on election day has to have a form of a valid identifying document. And the bill lays it out, and it includes everything you can imagine. Your driver's license, of course, your passport, an ID issued by the DMV, but it also includes your voter registration card. It includes a utility bill. And if you don't have any of those things, you could have your friend next to you and say, I swear that this is this person is who she says she is. And I'll write my name to it on a piece of paper, and then you can vote. But we were also given the challenge by the legislature, without appropriated funds, to issue a general program to provide a form of valid identifying document to any voter who can't get one. And I think this hits right at the heart of disenfranchisement. And I think it's a very important issue because if our legislature is saying that we have to have a document or something that proves who I am on election day, several parts of our community are not going to have those documents. Whether out of choice or because they don't have a choice, it's very difficult for them to get a utility bill, for example, if they're homeless, for example. So, what we've designed, instead of spending $200,000 for a statewide voter ID program where we interview someone and do all that, we made it as simple as possible. Nathan Martin, who is an election specialist in our office, found an ID printer in our basement that we use for like employee IDs. We will print a free voter ID for anybody who doesn't have a valid form of identifying document with a photo on it. So if someone only has a utility bill or a voter registration card, but they want a voter ID, all they have to do is go to the county clerk's office or call our office, and we will send a field rep to your front door if you want. The program we found online is, it can be on an iPhone, it can be on a computer. All you need is some form of wireless connectivity, and you can sign up for a voter ID. And I brought, it's in my pocket, I brought an example of what one would look like. This is our koala Nathan. And what we'll do is when you apply for this, you can pass around the left. When you apply for this, you have to be a registered voter. There's two main requirements. You have to be a registered voter in West Virginia, and your address has to be up to date. That's just for legal purposes. We couldn't give someone an ID and an address that we know they don't live there. So if there's something wrong with your address, you'd have to fix that before you can apply for an ID. So you apply for an ID, and then we also need you to have some address where we can send this to. Whether it's a homeless shelter, a P.O. box, it doesn't matter. We don't care if your address is in Maryland. If you say you're a registered voter in West Virginia, and you apply for this thing, we will send you a voter ID for free. Whatever address you want to send. It's not the best solution, and we know that. We know it's not the best solution, but with West Virginia's financial issues right now, with the Secretary of State's office limited budget already, and with very little guidance from the legislature, we weren't sure how to implement a free voter ID program. So we just found this printer in the basement, and we paid $1,000 a year for the software that allows us to create that ID. And like I said, our field reps can go to a homeless shelter, They can go to a retirement home, they can go to the city square. We'll send them wherever. We'll send them to high schools. We'll send them wherever. Yes?
That sounds like a really good solution.
Thank you.
When you say it's not a solution, what do you think?
Because there's always going to be that one person that doesn't know to ask. Who's going to show up on election day and say, I don't have a driver's license. It is, yes, exactly. So education is a major part of it. Well, we can talk to the State Election Commission on Wednesday, and I'm going to ask them for some. They have about $5,000 in a fund that's used just for educating the public. And I'm going to ask if we can expend at least half of that for PSAs, for just handouts. And we have until May 2018 to get the word out. So we plan on spending a lot of money on commercials, like radio, newspaper, we'll be in the newspapers, it'll be everywhere. And it'll be, I hope, abundantly clear to everyone who can read and listen, that you have to have an ID on election day. But if anybody doesn't want to deal with that, nobody wants to get an ID, nobody wants to take it with them on election day, deal with getting their picture taken for some free ID sent from the Secretary of State's office, you can still absentee vote without an ID.
Oh.
Yeah, you only need it for in-person election, in-person voting on election day, or if you vote in person early voting. Yes.
Did they include student IDs as a acceptable ID?
Yes, student ID is included. Any ID with a photo on it in your name counts. But I mean, it's almost a silly law to me. This is just my personal opinion. This is not the opinion from the Secretary of State's office. But when this bill was drafted, I could forge a utility bill. I could get somebody's utility bill, white it out, type my name on the top of it, type some address on it, and walk in with this document. So I guess if somebody really wants to cheat the system, there's a lot of easier ways to do it.
Isn't this whole thing,
Right?
wasn't this whole thing a way to cheat the system to make sure that everybody didn't get to vote for Town Democratic votes, particularly from Republicans at legislature?
That's one argument. You're right. But I don't have those political opinions. I just do what my legislature tells me to do.
I think it's a good thing that there is a plan to do a lot of publicity.
There is.
And I can see, there are, 4 legal and the voters groups in the state, plus the state league. We can really help it.
That would be awesome. That would be really awesome. And I would love to help. I will draft the literature. I will even pay for the pamphlets. We just have to get the word out. So I haven't until May to do that. But this is just our attempt at doing the most we can to make sure anybody who needs an ID for election day can get it for free and easy. Yes.
Just thinking about voter registration drives, would this be something that they could ask your office to come to be there to provide these during voter registration drives? Premature for.
Yeah, it is. Only because we don't want to issue an ID to somebody who's not already registered to vote, and we don't want to sign them up simultaneously because we still have to get back, the county clerk has to get back and make sure this address is right or this person is right. It has to verify the residence. So once they're registered to vote, then we can do that. But maybe it's possible that we could have a box. We could have a box on the voter registration application that says, I would like for ID, a voter ID, because I don't have driver's license, or I don't have this. So once the application is submitted, we could automatically, send out the,
What about the scheduling?
yeah, it's not bad.
About the scheduling of voting, there's been so many clampdowns and opportunities to vote.
Oh, talking like deadlines for registered to vote.
If you have the ID, but your work situation means being told to be open. It's a real serious situation.
It is. That's why we have absentee voting. Several, at least in municipal elections, have vote by mail. We tried vote by mail, I think, in 2010. Natalie Tennant headed that and there were 5 counties, I think, that participated. And the report I read basically said that there's not enough data to ascertain whether or not this was more of a benefit than a burden on the economy for the state. Turnout numbers didn't really increase. It didn't seem like
They did in Mon County a lot.
In your county, they did a lot?
Yes.
Which county, here?
Mon County.
Yeah, Mon County was big, and Putnam County.
I think I got any Morgantown.
Not the county, just Morgantown?
And the percentages were much higher. It was in the 20s, 23%, I think, which we average, 15 or less.
Really?
Many other voters. But the city council, Dr. Wolfie, they changed membership
Got
and
political.
refused to go ahead with the second year, which was to provide comparative data with the
Right.
first year.
Right.
And that underlines the whole state problem.
And Putnam County had a similar experience. In Bryan Wood and Carey, and I think his name is Jason Williams. He was the election director for the Secretary of State's office during that time. They all got together and wrote a report on it. It basically said that the results were inconclusive, and the legislature just never passed another bill that allowed us to do another vote on that project. So, if we want to do it again, if we want to try it again, now that it's 2017, we're 7 years down the road, and when that was first started, other states do it. Colorado does it statewide. Alaska does it statewide. Oregon does it statewide. Washington, right. And I'm good friends with those state elections directors. In fact, Judge Choten in Colorado, he leads the nation pretty much everything except for voter turnout, which is, I think, New Hampshire. But they all do vote by mail, and they say it's a wonderful program. So now down the road, if this is something that we want to pursue, I would encourage this group to talk with the West Virginia Association of Counties, and specifically Susan Thomas, who's the president, Linda Huggins, she's in Preston County. There are 2 more. Diana Cromley from Mason County. I can't remember. She'll hate me. Well, there are 4. The West Virginia Association of Counties. They pass bills back and forth between each other that solely deal with elections-related issues. Whether it's campaign finance, whether it's voting systems, whether it's electioneering, whether it's just cleaning up old code where it says punch card, which we don't have anymore. That's what that group really focuses on. They would be the ones that would really be able to get the legislature to push a bill through like that. And we would, whatever the county clerks want, we'll partner. So keep that in mind. Speaking of the clerks and the Association of Counties, automatic voter registration. You asked about motor voter. I assume you were talking about how it intertwines with automatic voter registration. So the county clerks and the DMV really pushed back at the automatic voter registration implementation, which was supposed to be 2018. The legislature delayed it another year, so automatic voter registration won't come into effect until 2019. And the reason being, and the Secretary of State's office didn't have a hand in it because really it doesn't affect our office at all. It doesn't, we don't do anything with voter registrations other than you see the numbers go up. The county clerks, as you all know, have limited resources. Mon County is lucky in that there's a lot of people here and tax dollars will fund a lot of good things that can go through. But the smaller counties like Clay, Calhoun, Wyoming, Dow, even Mercer, Raleigh, they don't have enough staff to take the influx of voter registrations and simply process it. For example, in Marion County, and in McDowell County, there's one girl who runs the registration system. One girl. And it's a full-time job for 3 people. So that was one of the issues. They don't have the resources on hand to process the influx of voter registrations. The second reason was that the DMV, they don't have the resources to process the influx of voter registrations. For those of you that don't know, when you go to the DMV, if you want to register to vote, check that box. That person who's working the computer there has to do something extra for our office and send us information. We get it daily. We get voter registrations daily from the DMV, usually about 100 a day. And so 55 counties, that's 2 people per county. But usually it's focused on the voter counties. With automatic voter registration, that goes from 2 per county, which is, if you do the math, it's something like 0.01% of the people that go to the DMV on a monthly basis, to 100% of the people that go to the DMV every day, minus the people who opt out, who check the box that says, I don't want to be registered, because that's what it will be in 2019. So that it's double the work and the same amount of people with the DMV. So when the DMV and the county clerks heard about this coming through and being implemented in 2018, they just said, we're not doing it. So several states have passed it, Rhode Island being the most recent, I think, and they've seen some decent results. One of the negative things about ADR is just from an optics standpoint is that your voter turnout goes way down. Because your turnout is based on number of registered voters versus how many show up in election day. But that's less important than somebody wanting to vote on election day and saying, you know what, I think I'm registered to vote. I'm going to go vote. Versus having a plan at least 21 days in advance. So that's where voter is. Yes?
What about the Oregon system, where you go to the DMV and you register your car, you automatically you're registered as a voter?
So that's what we will have in 2019.
I see. Okay.
That's what was pushed back, that automatic registration.
Oh, automatic.
Right, yeah. Sorry, I'm sorry if I've used acronyms to confuse you. I'm really working on that. I just started this job in January, and I've worked really hard to learn the acronyms, and I'll learn them on top of people who don't do it every day. Okay, let's talk. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so I'm sure everybody is very pleased with our county clerk's effort. At least I'm very pleased with our county clerk's effort. It's the last election for the statewide vote. Even though we only had 10% turnout. It was a Saturday election. There were several statewide festivals going on. Candidates were not on the ballot, so you didn't see a lot of political action committees spending money on TV and radio and pamphlets and things like that. So all things considered, it was actually about average for a special election. But I think the county clerks did a really good job. I really do. They were first, they're in the middle of voter registration list maintenance process where we sent out 130,000 cards to people who have moved, that were identified in ERIC. And that's a major undertaking for them. It was the first time we had done it. And 130,000 postcards are a lot. Because you have to read each one, you have to scan the signature, you have to verify that that's really who it is before you take any action on it. So it's a lot of mail, it's a lot of reading. Like I said, none of the counties have the resources. The majority of the counties don't have the resources to process things like that. So on top of ERIC, the counties were also running a new election that the governor called, and by paper ballot. And the reason it was by paper ballot is because the governor simply asked us to run the most efficient, cost-efficient election possible. If we had used electronic voting machines statewide, which Monongalia County was the sole county in West Virginia that used electronic machines, it would have cost the state overall like $1.6 million more than the paper ballot. And that includes buying brand new ballot boxes, voting booths, all of the materials. It's about $900 per voting machine to program for an election. So with 1,800 precincts and at least 2 machines, at the lowest 2 machines per precinct, it comes up to $1.6 million. There's other programming that has to happen. You also have to have a central tabulation machine. I won't get into it. It's very expensive to run an electronic election. So that's why this one was paper ballot throughout the state. And the county clerks did that. They learned how to run a paper ballot election because they've been using voting machines since 2005. They learned to do that, and they did their list maintenance legally under the National Voter Registration Act, which takes a lot more time to do legally than it would not do it legally. They all follow the rules and also do a good job. So we're really proud of them for that, and you really do have a great county clerk here. Carrie does a great job. She's very passionate about what she does. And one thing to find among people that are in the elections world that I found very quickly is I'd never been in the elections world before January. I was practicing family law in Taze Valley. And then I was in law school before that. I don't even know how many times I voted in the county in here. since January, I've learned how passionate elections administrators are about not just list maintenance, but election integrity, voter confidence, and ultimately democracy. It's the one thing that America has, the way we have it. It's nowhere else in the world. Secretary Warner tells a story about his son in Afghanistan, where one of his duties was on election day in Afghanistan to actually escort people to polling places because the Taliban had put roadside bombs all around all of the polling places because they didn't want anybody to go vote. And so soldiers died protecting democracy from another country. That's how deep it runs in his family. So I think it's a testament, not just to Kerry Blaine, but to the state, that it takes such pride and go through such hell to run an efficient legal election. So anyway, off the soapbox. With that, the Presidential Advisory Commission on election integrity. I'll sum it up very quickly. We don't know what their goals are. They haven't told us what their goals are. I know a lot of media think it's a voter fraud commission, and that's what everybody says in the TV. It's a voter fraud commission. They've asked for voter registration lists from all 50 states with a security application that anybody can get. You can get it, a political action committee can get it, a candidate can get this list, and it includes the name, the address. It might include date of birth depending on what you request in your list. Your voter history, which is when you voted, not when you voted for, and your political party affiliation. What those lists do not include are your social security number, your driver's license number, any ID number issued by the DMV, an email address, a home phone number, a cell phone number. None of that is disclosed to you, and we won't disclose it. And we absolutely will never disclose it. They'll have to come and hack their own system or something if they want that. But a lot of people don't think about it, but the federal government already has everything. They have everything. They have your social security. They know where you live and how you That's right. But the reason they ask Secretaries of State's office for this information is because it's already in a readable format on an Excel sheet. It just makes the data easy to look at when you're doing whatever you're doing. Yes?
Where is it? Where is it now?
Voter registration system. It's in what's called Azure. It's a server hosted by Microsoft, and it's like double secure. It's encrypted. When stuff is encrypted when it goes in, and it does this stuff in the system, and it comes out. Have you ever seen Willy Wonka, the original? You know the Wonka vision, when you're a dude here and it breaks you up into particles and you appear over here. That's the first part of it, and it does it again before it goes into the server. So when you send information, when you save something in the voter registration system, it's double encrypted. And then we also have a firewall. It's managed. It's called Barracuda. It's a good firewall. And that's what our cybersecurity expert monitors. So the physical location of it is unknown to people for a reason.
That's the bit. So is it administered in Charleston?
We have access to it only in Charleston and in a locked down in the basement. We got a bunch of key code in there, and then that's where the master guard guy sits. And then you got to go back to another computer. If you want to get in the back end is like the administrator, and you can see the programming. But you have to have all the password protections. You have to have the special thing with your keychain that's got a code in it. But the actual data itself, the server itself, is housed in some we don't even know where it is. That's how secure it is. So anyway, the commission asked for the list. They paid for the list. We made them pay $1,000, which is what everybody else has to pay for. And they got a basic simple list. But it's nothing that hasn't been administered to the Republican Executive Committee, the Democratic Executive Committee, Tom Jones running for mayor. Anybody who runs a campaign gets the exact same list that the commission got. The commission can get any more than anybody else. And it's a list that's been made public since the law was passed in 1994. So it is concerning, but it's been public. And by law, we were required to do it because they paid for the list. And, we just know where. Let's say we didn't do it. A lot of people say, let's don't do it. just don't get it. The Freedom of Information Act, they could submit a request under the Freedom of Information Act, and that information is expressly permitted for disclosure. So the only reason we could could exempt it from disclosure under the Freedom of Information Act is if it was exempt by statute. The statute says this is public information. So you make $1,000 doing it. So we didn't wait for the FOIA and we just let them pay for it. We simply did.
It's good for us that there is a West Virginia clerk on the commission.
Yes, and so Mark Rhodes is on the commission. He's one of 10 members of this national commission. And if you don't know, Vice President Pence is the chair, Chris Kobach.
That makes me not trust any of it. Anything
I understand.
that they do. Between Chris Kobach and Mike Pence and the president, I do not trust them this far, any of them.
So far, they haven't really done it. But
Well, that's their idea.
I don't
The
know
whole
what
idea
they're
of this
doing.
is to do something, to make sure that people can't vote. That's their whole idea behind this.
I think that they have a lot of goals, but Mark Rhodes, who is a Democrat, hasn't said one thing or another. A registered Democrat, but also an election official who cares about the integrity of West Virginia elections. And I truly believe that there was something nefarious going on that he wouldn't keep it from us. He's just a good old boy. He really is. If you go back and watch his very first interview from the Integrity Commission's first coming out when they went on national TV, Mark told a story of when he became county clerk. He wanted to see if the system really worked. So he made himself look dead in the voter registration system. He actually killed himself in the voter registration system. He said deceased. And he forgot to undo it. So he went on election day and they said, "I'm sorry, sir, you can't vote." "I'm the county clerk." "Sir, it says you're deceased. You're not in the poll book." He had a voter provisional ballot in his own election. So the system worked, but that's the story he told. Everybody's talking about all their accolades. We had the Vice President of the United States talking about his accolades, Chris Kobach, the Secretary of State for Kansas, right? And several very highbrow, very learned elections officials from around the nation. And that's the story Mark Rhodes chose to tell. I think that speaks volumes for what he's there to represent, which is the small guy, the small states, the counties. That's why he's there. He's the county clerk to represent the county clerks of the nation. Now, what the commission does, what they're up to, we truly don't know. Mark hasn't told us. We don't have a constant line of communication. I don't know if Mark has a constant line of communication with the commission. But I think that goes to show it doesn't matter. Because in West Virginia, we're doing good stuff. We are. We really are doing good things. And as we clean up the rolls and register the people, as we make sure people are able to go on election day and vote, but they do voter ID, as we look at the laws and change them, or fix them, or write new ones to comply with not only federal law, but what we think is right, it just moves in the right direction. West Virginia, I think, is an important part of its history because we're at the cusp of the first time in history that our vote totals on election day could be higher than our business and licensing operation has surpassed all years historically. We have something like 98% of our filers now doing it online and saving money by doing it. We have a new office downtown that's we're renting from a local that moved the registration office from the Capitol across the street. So when you go to update your business license, you don't have to park and pay for parking out and walk 400 yards and go through the security guards and get patted down and have all your filings here just to find out you left your ID back in the car. And then you have to wait for 2 hours at the Secretary of State's office because the room is so small. We have more business and licensing, less business and licensing people, but more room, more efficient service. I think just the one stop is what they call it. It's just good stuff. And I didn't know anything about the Secretary of State's office before I came there. But I really think the people there love what they do. I love it, I do. And I think that as people hear us and ask us questions, and we have these ideals of what we think is going on, and what we learn after talking to people, it seems like we're all on the same side. And the good thing about elections is we're nonpartisan. At least I'm not partisan. I wasn't elected or anything. I was just hired to be an attorney, and they needed an elections director, and I just sat in for them until they found one. Ended up liking me, I guess. But in any event, I think we probably have some stuff. Yeah.
Any other
Yeah.
questions?
Yeah, thank you all. If you have any questions